Jahan Dotson catches 2 touchdown passes in a fantastic game from Carson Wentz, but can we trust that from him going forward? That more today on the Dynasty Newsletter. I'm your host, Adam Wilde, joined by my co-host, Chris Allen. Chris, Carson Wentz had himself a day. I guess that happens sometimes. Can we trust that kind of usage from Jahan Dotson going forward?
I don't see why not. If we're looking at just the underlying metrics, like for Dotson, like in his very first taste of NFL action, second in routes run, like amongst all wide receivers, still wound up getting at least what he was second or third in total targets. I mean, he tied for third, if I remember correctly, in targets with 5.
With Terry, I think.
Yeah,
I'm
with
pretty
Terry.
sure that Curtis Samuel was first.
Right. So it's just that's good to see that he was out there at least getting in his cardio, but still earning some of the targets, but then also earning the trust of his quarterback by being able to haul in not one. I mean, the first touchdown, if I'm remembering correctly, that was more when they were closer like to the actual goal line. But the second one came from, I think, just outside
15.
of the red zone, like 22-ish like yards out or something along those lines.
That second catch was insane, though.
I haven't seen the second one, but I remember seeing is Twitter like turning into like slot machine roll like right afterwards. So it's like, oh, okay, so I guess something big actually happened there. So no, that's good. I mean, that's what we would want to see like out of our rookie wide receivers, like right out of the gate. And even if it is like a guy like Carson Wentz who can be erratic at times, if I'm remembering correctly, his completion percentage over expected, while kind of CPOE on its own can be something of a screwy stat, like that you shouldn't weigh like too heavily, but at least seeing that Carson Wentz like was at least above the league average in CPOE for this week. He was actually efficient as a quarterback. They were number 1 in pass rate over expectation this week. That's wild to me. And they were they were also top 5 in pass rate over expectation once they came into the red zone. So if this is now going to be a passing offense, which I assumed was going to be more of a conservative offense with Ron Rivera, I mean, Carson Wentz, after having just a completely horrific tenure in Indianapolis, and obviously they're getting booted out of Philadelphia as well. This was just not what I expected, like at all, like out of this passing offense. But with Dotson being there and Wentz looking like he's at least a relatively decent quarterback, at least for fantasy purposes. We'll see how quickly the wheels fall off in real football, like for the Commanders. But for right now, yeah, Dotson is looking like the real deal, and he's in an offense that he's actually going to get potential to score more fantasy points for us.
The reason I wanted to lead off with this is because it's really difficult when Carson Wentz comes out and puts on such a strong showing, which he did with the Colts, which he's done with the Eagles in the past, and you forget what he is capable of on the back end. So it's kind of surprising when he comes out with these monster games, but then it's really surprising when you remember, oh my goodness, why is he throwing left-handed interceptions to nose tackles? He does that too. And it makes it very difficult to trust players that you would have to pay up for. So in the future, we won't be doing like this thing happened this weekend, so now the dynasty value changes. However, in the past, in dynasty, people value week 1 almost as if it's a full season of data, maybe because you spend a whole offseason constructing what you believe might be reality, and then in week 1, it doesn't come to fruition like a lot of the players that we're going to talk about today. So this week is a week to capitalize on things where maybe people don't believe in Breece Hall going forward because of his week 1 usage and things like that. So that's why we're going to kind of go through player by player and just talk about, do we really trust what kind of happened? Do we believe that that's going to be the trend going forward? With Jahan Dotson, I do believe that his target percentage could actually go up. So, we're not talking about him if he doesn't get the 2 touchdowns. That's why he's polarizing. That's why he's going to be the thumbnail because it was the 2 touchdowns. One catch was good, a nice NFL catch. Another one was really good. Great placement by Carson Wentz and just a really veteran catch by Jahan Dotson as a rookie. So it was promising. Curtis Samuel's usage was weird, so it shouldn't be too terribly difficult for Jahan Dotson to take a bigger bite of that pie going forward. It's just how much are you going to trust Carson Wentz, and how often or how many years is Carson Wentz going to be the quarterback there? If we're talking about Jahan Dotson's whole rookie contract, then we have to decide if it's a plus or a minus, and if we want to invest in him now. For one, it's hard to invest in a player that just scored 2 touchdowns, but also, we talk about it. It's never too late to invest in a player because you paid for information. So now I know that he has that sort of ability. We already knew he could kind of be a deep threat. So It's just, do you want to invest in Jahan Dotson? I would still probably try to trade for Jahan Dotson, expecting to not pay too much of a premium for the two touchdowns. He only had 40 yards on, I believe, 5 catches. I'll have to look back to that. Maybe it was only 5 targets.
For Dotson, 3 catches, 5 targets.
3 catches, 5 targets, 40 yards, 2 touchdowns. So people shouldn't be trying to break your fingers over trading for Jahan Dotson. And really, I just wanted to see how he incorporated into the offense, especially with how they used Dameon Brown last year. I understand Dameon Brown wasn't a first-round pick, but he was a premium pick, and they did not use him appropriately at all. That was a concern of mine. So of the players we're going to talk about today, Jahan Dotson was probably the most promising start in just that, wow, he's going to be a real NFL wide receiver right away.
Possibly. I guess my only other, I mean, you were talking about like Carson Wentz being the wild card in terms of how this offense is going to look moving forward. But did you see how many targets Antonio Gibson got?
That's incredible. I was going to get to that next.
That's the wild card for me at this point,
great.
is if they're actually going to start to turn the ship around for Gibson, like as being used as a receiver, like he should have been all along. And that's the thing that I'm kind of keying off of, because we expected Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel. I mean, even Logan Thomas, I was surprised he was actually active and actually out there running routes as well. But like I expected all these other guys to be a part of the offense. I did not expect Antonio Gibson to be like tied for, I think he was second like in targets on Sunday. So I think that's kind of the wild card like for me moving forward. Wentz is going to be Wentz. And honestly, when people drafted Dotson like over the summertime, like in their rookie drafts, that kind of went into our process for drafting him. Like we looked at his situation, we looked at like his age, his draft profile, and all those other things, and we saw, yep, he's going to be tied to Carson Wentz for however many years. Like all that factored into his price. This shift, which with just a 1 week sample, is a fairly significant shift. Like that's the thing that I'm trying to figure out, and we'll be monitoring over the next few weeks to see if Gibson is now going to be a significant impact like on the passing game. Because if that's the case, then we kind of really need to reevaluate this the entire passing attack for this, because now it's not just Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel and maybe a little bit of Logan Thomas, where Jahan Dotson could fit in as the 2B, 3A, however you want to look at it. If Gibson is now factoring in as a legit, like if he is now essentially what they wanted J.D. McKissic to be, one that raises the question why they even bothered bringing McKissic back.
Well, McKissic had some work too, though. So
yeah, he got some, but it's just like this is a big deal at this point that we really need to take a look, because now the question is, can Carson Wentz support 5, 6 different passing options? I don't know. See, and that's where things become a little dicey for me.
So the direct correlation to them being so heavily over pass rate over expectation is because Antonio Gibson was used so much as a receiver, and maybe that was going to be his role with Brian Robinson. So actually, we've got news: Brian Robinson should be returning, eligible to return in, I believe, week 5. And they're talking about a 5-week timetable, so maybe he misses one more game after returning from IR. That's a fantastic story, but maybe they just kept Gibson in that role and said, hey, you know what? We were ready for this. Gibson was going to be more of a receiver. McKissic was going to be a primary receiver, and Gibson did great. It's almost like he played wide receiver in college. Crazy. Maybe they should have done that last year. So that's going to lead us into another rookie running back in Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce's usage was a little scary. I know my DFS column, I talked about Dameon Pierce as a good play solely because I just believed that he was going to have plenty more opportunity than Rex Burkhead in the passing game. 2 things didn't happen. One, the Texans didn't trail. Actually, they led most of the game, if not maybe all of the game, since they tied. And then also Rex Burkhead factored in the passing game when they did pass. So I believe that that's going to shift over the year. I would not be concerned. Dameon Pierce was still listed as the starter. He was a 4th-round rookie. Not something that you'll want to panic about. You certainly can't trade him away right now. You can't really trade for him. You probably should have done that already currently. Maybe you could try to trade. If someone's scared and you're in a league with your buddies or something, you might be able to try to get somebody off of Dameon Pierce, but not too afraid of that usage. I don't know. Are you afraid of 32-year-old Rex Burkhead?
No, it's not the fact that I'm afraid of 32-year-old Rex Burkhead. It's just the situational usage that Breece Hall wasn't afforded. Now, you can look at the overall like box score and say that, oh yeah, he wasn't used like in this particular way. Like we didn't see like the targets really being there for Rex Burkhead, or even just like the overall touches, but like goal line touches like weren't even there for him. Like red zone touches like weren't there. So it's just like 2-minute stuff. It's like even the pieces of the traits that we're looking for, like in an NFL like bell cow type of back, which not to say that we thought he was going to be a bell cow like me and you, but the way that his cost was being propped up like over the past like few weeks, like especially before the season started, that's the territory that we were marching towards. Because everyone's like, well, no, nobody cares about Rex Burkhead. Nobody cares about, I mean, Marlon Mack is now gone on the practice squad. Yeah, nobody cares anymore. It's now Dameon Pierce's backfield. Lovie Smith named him the starter. Oh my God, like he's now has to, he's worth this much. And then this happens. So yeah, I am somewhat concerned on a team that is, not to say devoid of talent, but let's say they need talent. They need young talent.
What do you mean? They have OJ Howard. Didn't you see his 2 touchdown catches?
Two targets, 2 catches, and 2 touchdowns. That's what's wonderful. I mean, that you can just like roll onto a new team and do something like that. But it's like on a team that needs talent, they're not putting Pierce out on the field for the, especially in a game that was tied. Like they had a chance to win the divisional game. And so it wasn't like this was no throwaway. So I am somewhat concerned, but of course the theme of this entire show is that we cannot overreact to 1 week samples. But I mean, your antenna, like it has to be up, the eyebrows raised when you see something like this happen right out the gate.
That was so weird. You raised an excellent point in that he was not utilized in a situation where they needed some sort of spark, because my whole write-up was predicated around the fact that when it came down to it, they were going to need Dameon Pierce because he's that much more talented than Rex Burkhead. And they said, whoop, wait a second. We need the veteran Rex Burkhead in there. So maybe Dameon Pierce is, well, not a maybe, he is certainly more physically talented than Rex Burkhead at this point in their respective careers. However, maybe they wanted that veteran presence. And, Lovie Smith had that punt in the overtime. So you can tell what kind of coach he's going to be in. 32-year-old Rex Burkhead really appeals to that sort of coach. Before we get to our next rookie running back that had concerning usage, just remember we're coming at you from the Footballguys newsletter, brought to you by Cecil Lammy, Sigmund Bloom. Comes straight to your email box by Joe Bryant, and that's going to give you all the news that you need to know. If you happen to be out with the kids on Sunday running errands and you miss some things, you're going to see all of that in the email newsletter. And then we will pull out all the Dynasty tidbits that we can from that newsletter and bring it to you here on the Dynasty newsletter. So now the concerning usage is Breece Hall, but the only difference in this situation is that Michael Carter is actually good. We knew Michael Carter was actually good. Michael Carter did not get the same draft capital as Breece Hall. Breece Hall was drafted in the 2nd round, and we figured if they're going to draft him in the 2nd round, then they felt like they needed something over Michael Carter. Michael Carter's named the starter. We're like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And then Michael Carter has a fantastic game. Now, Breece Hall did get their own receptions. But if you were not in a PPR league, then you don't care about that. So how are you? What's your scale on panic for Breece Hall?
I would say mid, not as much as Dameon Pierce, just because, as you pointed out, I mean, he was still involved, like in the areas that at least we think should be there for a running back that we want to at least be versatile. Like we want him involved on the early downs. Breece Hall was out there on the early downs, nearly matched like Michael Carter in terms of number of snaps that were played with them on early downs. Was there in the passing game. You already mentioned that. Like, yes, he was there in the passing game. But quick question: how many snaps do you think Breece Hall played in either short yardage or goal line? The
None.
2 main ones, like for a running back, especially the one that we think Breece Hall is going to be in the future. You're right.
None for 100.
0. Yes. Like, and for a running back like that matters. That from at least to me, that matters the most, because at least in terms of physicality, in terms of athleticism, in terms of power, like that was
when was his fumble
being sold as. I thought that was earlier in like first half, like at some point, if I remember.
See, I didn't see the fumble, but if the fumble was early, Robert Saleh is not the type of head coach that's going to put him back in the game in any sort of meaningful situation, which is silly, but
I don't know. I mean, that I'm not gonna say like one way or the other, but it is interesting that, well, I could see that him not pulling. I can see Saleh pulling him in goal line situations. I don't know about short yardage, because
sure.
even still, it's
I
just
mean, he's
like
got the size advantage for sure.
exactly. So it's like in the situations where you thought it would matter the most, Breece Hall is not on the field and it's Michael Carter. So that's why it's me. It's more of like a mid type of thing. And again, 1 week samples. It's the Jets. It's like Joe Flacco, the backup. I mean, all these other factors go into it. I get it. I get it. But in week 1, when again, after we've spent all this time, when people saying that Breece Hall is such a greater talent than Michael Carter, Breece Hall is one of the best prospects to come out in however many years, Breece Hall, it's Michael Carter that's being used in the ways that we would expect Breece Hall to be. So it's worth our attention as dynasty managers to at least see if the trend corrects itself in the way that we think it should over the next few weeks. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're not taking a 1-on-1 still in rookie drafts or anything like that. I mean, it might take these rookie running backs a little bit to come along, and we're not talking about football first round of running backs this year. So second round back, I mean, he's still a great profile, and he had the receiving work. I think that Breece Hall is somebody. I mean, he's going to my bench, but yeah, I think halfway through the year. Discussion we had before the show was that, well, we felt good about the passing work, and then you brought up, well, Zach Wilson's probably not going to check the ball down for one as much as he should, but certainly not as much as Joe Flacco or even Mike White if he were to come in. So the thought is that Breece Hall is up to speed by the time Zach Wilson comes back, and then he's the true number 1 running back by then, and then it wouldn't matter if he was getting fed those checkdowns. But if you have to flex Breece Hall now, you can at least take solace in knowing that they're probably going to be losing. So they're probably going to throw a lot of checkdowns to Breece Hall. 6 catches is nothing to scoff at for a running back. That is for sure.
True. And it's like, this is all narrative-y based. Like, I have no data to support this at all. And so, somebody in the comments can come yell at me or whatever. But it's just, what does Joe Flacco have left to prove, like, as a passer? Nothing. Like, the book is out. Like, we got tape on Joe Flacco. So him going out and throwing a bunch of interceptions, that's only going to damage his legacy, like whatever legacy he's got. But in the same thing for like Mike White as a backup quarterback, why should he be forcing the ball into these tight windows when he knows that his livelihood is going to be living as a backup quarterback? He wants to be the guy that can come in, get paid, $3, $4, $5 million to show up, maybe start a couple of games if something bad were to happen, and at least keep the offense moving as it needs to. So those checkdowns are worth it to him. They're worth it to Joe Flacco too. Those checkdowns ain't worth it to Zach Wilson, because the offense needs to know, can they push the ball downfield? Can they be aggressive? Can they open up the offense? Can they design more extravagant or like more complicated concepts for the offense to run, like moving forward? Zach Wilson needs to be able to show the rest of the entire Jets organization that he can be the guy they drafted at, what was it, 102, 103, wherever they drafted him at. Was it second overall? I think it was second overall. But either way, it is worth it to Zach Wilson to continue to force things downfield into double, triple coverage or whatever psychotic decision he comes up with once the ball is snapped. But for Joe Flacco and Mike White, the checkdown should be there for Michael Carter and Breece Hall. So that's why this receiving workload for either of them could be, the whole argument for a receiving workload could be completely moot once Wilson comes under center, because that offense is going to be so much different at that point anyway.
Absolutely. We have 2 more topics to cover. Both of them are going to be committees, so we're going to bring Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs to the floor. Christian Watson ended up having, I guess you probably have the numbers pulled up, so I'll let that come to you. It was interesting that they both ran the exact same run play. I think they both net like greater than 10 yards, so I guess that was kind of cool. In my brain, it's been Christian Watson versus Romeo Doubs because so many people were putting Romeo over Christian Watson in best ball. And I mean, Christian Watson was hurt the whole offseason, but I lean into draft capital more. Second round versus fourth round hit rate is just massive. I believe we talked with Peter Howard about it at the expo, something like 6% for a fourth rounder as opposed to 27 or 28% for a second rounder. So huge difference there. So I just leaned into Christian Watson, and the draft wasn't great. Wasn't great. Aaron Rodgers looking at the sideline like, hey, told you so. Wasn't great. But hey, by all accounts, just to go on a side tangent here because I can, by all accounts, Aaron Rodgers says that they tried to give Davante Adams actually more money than the Raiders. And Davante Adams wanted to go play with his best friend, which, like, it's your life, more power to you. And he did. So why is Aaron Rodgers looking at the sideline so snarky, like, hey, I told you so, when they're like, hey, dude, we tried to pay him as much money as we possibly could, and he didn't want it. So I don't really get that Aaron Rodgers scorched earth narrative. Like, in years past, like when they took Jordan Love, totally got it. That was dumb. Should have got a wide receiver. Got it. This time, hey, what did you want him to do? They tried to pay Davante Adams and he left. So you have Christian Watson now. He's got to catch that. He didn't. But as someone who likes Christian Watson, you can spin narratives however you want. He was open, right? So what do you think about the Christian Watson versus Romeo Doubs conversation?
That's going to be annoying, and it's going to continue on throughout the entirety of the year. And it's probably going to continue on for the next like couple of seasons until the point where we're going to be arguing about, like, not me and you, because I don't care enough, but just like people are going to be going back and forth about him like 3 or 4 years down the line about like, well, he dropped this or he made this mistake or whatever. Aaron Rodgers said this and like all this other stuff. And that's probably the path that we're heading down, because it's almost like when we were talking earlier about like week 1 drafters and fantasy and dynasty managers taking this as a referendum for either the entire season or a rookie's entire career. It's not that big of a deal, at least in the grand scheme of things, because especially in this situation, they don't have many other options. There have been no rumors of them going out and trying to coax Will Fuller out of whatever retirement thing that he's at. There's no other free agents like walking through the door.
That would be incredible.
But this is what they got.
Yeah.
So what else are they supposed to do at this point? They don't have any other options. So Aaron Rodgers is going to have to live with this world that they've now created like for themselves. And I'm fine with the way that they came out. I mean, of course, yes, dropping a 60-70 yard touchdown pass like from Aaron Rodgers, probably not the best thing to do.
What if he caught that, man? What if he caught that?
Well, then everybody would have been going, see, I told you so. You should have never been given up. I mean, it just like the I told you so crew would have been out like in a heartbeat. And then all the Doubs like believers would have been like, well, we'll just wait for next week. And then the argument would have just like gone on like next week. So, but neither were efficient. Like 1.48 yards per route run for Romeo Doubs, this is according to PFF, 1.17 for Christian Watson. That is terrible. I mean, but like almost like not both running backs, but AJ Dillon, both the tight ends, I think all more efficient. And for a wide receiver, you really want to be like at least as close to 2 as possible yards per route run. So to see them running routes, which is great, but still nothing really matching the efficiency of what you would expect, neither really earning the targets that you would want. But it's just, again, because they're being forced out there into that type of situation, this is what we find ourselves with. So I just think it's funny that was it Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs like conversation? The answer was neither.
Well, it wasn't Sammy Watkins either. I think now we're just at the point where it's like, oh, this offense is just going to be bad. And that was never part of the equation for the conversation in this offseason. We never, ever, at least I never considered the offense being bad. So I said, well, someone has to be good because the offense will not be bad. And it was just week 1. So we don't know that the offense was going to be bad, but I tell you what, it was terrible. And Aaron Rodgers wasn't great either.
Well, yeah, but I would say that not having Bakhtiari, not having Elton Jenkins.
Yeah, both of them were.
Yeah, both of them out. So it's just, I can see that being part of the issue.
But Bakhtiari is going to be injured all year.
Right. And we came into the season, at least with the, I don't want to say expectation, but under the assumption that this was going to be a problem for them. Mm-hmm. So it's just without that. And also we came in under the assumption that this defense was going to be one of the best defenses like in the league.
Every single redraft team I have has
that.
The Packers.
That's the other big assumption that we walked into for the Packers, thinking that, well, even if the offense was mid, this defense could at least cover up for some of the mistakes the offense would make. Almost like with Cincinnati and them completely imploding yesterday. It's like, even with the offense, if the offense sputters, the defense could keep things in check, which we saw for the most part. I mean, Cincinnati's defense is what really kept it from being a blowout yesterday, but the Packers didn't allow that because Justin Jefferson went berserk. So if the defense now can also like come to at least take a step forward like we expect it to, then yeah, we're in a whole different situation with the Packers than we really thought 2 weeks ago or even a week ago regarding this, like not just the offense, but the entire team.
Sure. I mean, and if you're going to buy into Aaron Rodgers turning it around, remember last year he won the MVP after getting beat 30-3 by Jameis Winston. So if you buy into them turning it around, Sammy Watkins didn't look like he's going to block anyone out. Plus, it's a really weird wide receiver grouping anyways. I think Christian Watson's going to end up being a full-time player out of necessity because it's really weird for Sammy Watkins to get stuck on the outside 100% of the time because Randall Cobb can only play the slot pretty much, at least effectively. So that makes Christian Watson pretty much a full-time player by default. So if you want to try to invest in Christian Watson because he dropped that huge pass and was getting negative offseason already. So if people want to take week one as an I told you so, you could probably trade for Christian Watson because he wasn't too expensive anyways. I mean, you probably could acquire him for a second round 2023 pick, actually. Probably at this point. And I would do that. So we have one more backfield to get to just because we have the Elijah Mitchell injury. We do not know a timetable on that yet. But what we do know is that most teams, maybe you take a wait and see approach on this. 49ers will bring a running back off of the street that was at the game and put him in the lineup, and he'll have 100 yards and a touchdown. So now we've got Ty Davis-Price and Jordan Mason, undrafted rookie, stepping in, and Kyle Shanahan had the Coach Speak blurb today that they're going to have to grow up quick. So at least we know that those two guys are probably going to be factored into the offense and active on game day. Do you have any sort of lean in Ty Davis-Price and Jordan Mason with the assumption that Jeff Wilson's starting, of course?
I would say that just pick either of them up and just stash them on your bench if you can get a hold of either. I'm assuming TDP is drafted in most leagues, but if you get a hand, if you can pick up like Jordan Mason like on the cheap, or go ahead and throw him on there because it's a similar approach as any of the historical New England running backs. We'll figure it out. Like my concern though, and we were talking about this like beforehand, just like popping over to player profile and just looking at the metrics for Jordan Mason, we at least could see why Elijah Mitchell was productive almost out of the gate, like him being essentially a nobody before he started to pop after Raheem Mostert went down, because he fits that type of system. Like looking at the types of running backs that they've had in the past, like whether it was the Jet, like whether it was like Tevin Coleman, whether it was Raheem Mostert. I mean, those were types of guys that were track stars, like more or less. I mean, running 4.4s, like 4.5s, like something in that line. And that's what Elijah Mitchell ran, like when he was still at Louisiana Lafayette, like he ran a 4.4. Jordan Mason ran like a 4.6 plus. So if and like he weighs like 220 and some change. So if he doesn't fit the mold, now that's not saying that he can't be productive, but if this is still going to be, that zone scheme that they've been using in order to get Deebo Samuel out in space, to get like insert running back name here, generating explosives that way, I don't think Jordan, like he doesn't fit that profile. Doesn't mean for me to say that he can't do it. I'm not a talent evaluator, but if you just stacked up all of those guys that I just mentioned, whether it's Mostert, whether it's Coleman, whether it's McKinnon, whether it's Elijah Mitchell, shoot, if you want to throw in JaMychal Hasty in there, so fine. Just like line up all of their athletic metrics. Like one thing that this thing is not like the other, it would be Jordan Mason. But who knows like what the Grand Wizard like is cooking up like behind the curtain. But I would say that the easiest thing to do is to get in on an efficient running game, like on the cheap, if you can. So if you can go ahead and grab Jordan Mason, go and do it.
I was thinking after our conversation, but after we already started the show, when we were talking about Jordan Mason's makeup and how he probably doesn't even fit the 49ers, I remembered Alfred Morris. And I was like, oh, that sounds a lot like the size that Alfred Morris was. At least exactly like 5'11", 220 something.
Yeah.
Maybe and ran a 4.6.
Yeah.
So Actually, if you think about it hard enough, go down Sigmund Bloom's narrative street. Alfred Morris might be the reason that Jordan Mason is on the team as an undrafted rookie, because Kyle Shanahan loved him some Alfred Morris.
That's probably true. Yeah.
As did I. I too loved me some Alfred Morris. So on that note, for Chris Allen, for Adam Wilde, thank you all for coming out. Please like, subscribe, rate, review, and make sure you remember that we are on a different feed from the Audible. So if you are not hearing us on Spotify and things like that, it's because you need to subscribe elsewhere. But that's all for today. We will check y'all next week.
Peace.